The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. You're listening to the Everyday Therapy Podcast. I'm JC Rader.
And I'm Julianne Schroeder.
And we're therapists bringing you honest conversations around emotional wellness and self-development.
Inspired by our personal experiences in therapy and because of our clients, we realize therapy has so much to offer both on and off the couch. Listen for tips and tools to navigate all the challenges that life throws your way.
To give us feedback on topics and guests, or for more information on our community events, counseling, or online services, contact us at everydaytherapypodcast.com. Hello and welcome. So yes, let's talk about White Rock Counseling. So that is our private practice here in the heart of Dallas. We do online sessions as well as in-person counseling sessions, and also teach some yoga therapy as well, psychotherapeutic yoga, individual sessions and group sessions for that. I primarily work with anxiety, depression, codependency, boundaries, relationships, general life transitions, and all the things that go with all of that. So much more, right? Just life stuff. Julian, share a little bit about what your specialties are.
Yeah, no, I think we have some overlap, some distinguishing specialties. I really like working with those that have encountered burnout, can be overachiever, perfectionistic, as well as those that are maybe identify as being more highly sensitive, as well as the relationship codependency, stuff, and some disordered eating as well.
Yes. Yeah. So we are here to support you and help you or guide you to somebody who can help you. You can visit us at whiterockcounseling.com to get more information and send us an email there.
Yeah. And if you're into social media and that stuff, we do have an Instagram, White Rock Counseling, and Facebook, where we share inspiration, some educational tips occasionally too. So
yes,
check us out.
All right. Well, let's talk about our topic today. This has been like one on the back burner that we've like really wanted to talk about because we can both relate to it so much. And I know so many other people will be able to relate to it. So, rejection.
Yes.
It's just not even a fun word to say. It kind of makes me cringe whenever I say it.
Yeah. No, I would be curious, like for those listening, like what you notice when you even just hear that word. Rejection.
Yeah, like my shoulders went into my ears a little bit and got tight.
My stomach just dropped a little bit. It's like, like a gut punch.
Yeah,
like literally caving in right now.
At one point in my life, I feel like my life's goal was to avoid that.
Oh, for sure. It still is at times. At times, right? Yeah. And then I was like, well, shoot, that's kind of limiting.
Yeah. Then I can't go out in public ever.
Can't talk to anybody ever.
Yeah, right? Definitely can't date.
No.
Yeah.
Can't do anything.
Can't apply for that job.
Right. Yeah.
Or grad school.
Yeah. No, and I think like we're being kind of tongue in cheek about it, but the reality is like we have to learn to deal with rejection if we're going to live a more full life.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a certain amount of like vulnerability that, you know, to live a fulfilling life that you have to like face rejection head on. So yeah, I think that like rejection comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's definitely on a spectrum of like what it looks like and what it can be.
Yeah. And we'll hopefully target kind of like, how do you deal with rejection just in terms of like maybe career opportunities, school opportunities, life sort of situations, hopes and dreams.
As relationships.
Well as, in relationship, that social piece.
Yeah. And as well, I love spectrums and
You love,
continuums.
love
I
that
feel
word.
like everything falls on one, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, certain people, everybody, I think, struggles with rejection, but I feel like certain people, especially like we both identify as more sensitive people, it is like harder to experience rejection.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you're making this point of understanding, I guess, your own self, your own upbringing, your own personality.
What's kind of contributed to like how you experience rejection.
Yeah, because there are those that can be more resilient. And also, guess what? It's a skill that can be learned too, and also like things, there are so many variables, right? But being able to like strike that balance of understanding yourself and learning, right? So
I just had this thought of, I think for me, for a long time, I feared rejection in the form of embarrassment. Like to me, and I don't typically think of like embarrassment as rejection. So I don't know. I think that it's important for listeners to kind of get creative. Like, what does rejection mean? Sure. And for me, for a long time, it was like fear of humiliation or embarrassment. Because that was like rejection for me ultimately, or being stupid. I don't know. How does it manifest for you?
Ask me. Oh, goodness. I drank a little too much coffee. Let me slow down my words. Okay, so let me ask you, when you're saying you fear embarrassment, like your experience of that, or is that a result of rejection?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I fear the experience of it. Like, can I tolerate, and this, no longer is that case. And maybe in some instances of like new people and whatnot. But yeah, like being in school, of like just like being terrified to like read out loud, of like, what if I mess up a word? What if, something happens, like people will laugh at me. And like, I don't know, to me, that was rejection. So yeah, it was the experience of, and it was almost like an anxiety of the experience. Like I could have probably handled it just fine.
Yeah.
But the anxiety around it, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's like so many thoughts related to that. And I think too, there's like, with rejection, we anticipate, right, that the worst is going to happen and that we can't handle it.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if like you're prone to be looking out for it and try to avoid it, right? Like there's this sense of like rejection in the moment when it's happening and it's hard. But then there's also this like, I'm going to protect myself from being rejected from somebody or something.
Yeah. And you were sharing that it seems like you wanted to avoid any sort of disapproval from others, or that like they would think that you're, and you said this before, and I think it's part of rejection is knowing like your ultimate rejection triggers. Fear of being seen as stupid or incompetent.
Yeah. Or the embarrassing part of like, I don't know, not being with it or doing something that's like not, quote unquote normal.
Okay.
My fear of like peeing my pants, that like, oh, that would be really weird and embarrassing and like people would reject me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm being very vulnerable here. What are some of your things that you fear being rejected about?
You're fearing that other people are going to judge you now? Hey, no, I'll come in and save you. Right. I definitely relate on this fear of being seen as incompetent or stupid, or inadequate. Oh my gosh. I remember, 7th grade, I was in choir and I tried out for the spring pop concert. Everybody loved it. We could sing all these fun songs. And I had to work up so much courage to even try out. And I like, part of me wonders, like, was he kind of taking pity on me? I don't know. Anyways, I was given a solo, a complete song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm like rubbing my chest as I'm retelling the story for those listening.
Are you feeling embarrassed or what?
Yeah, like I just remember that experience. It's like stored in my body apparently still.
Yeah.
But I was so nervous, and of course I would be, performing is going to bring that level of like, oh, are people going to like me or think I'm capable, competent.
Sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can imagine this was not a stellar performance. I was so anxious. I warbled. Do you know what I mean by saying that?
No, I mean, I can imagine.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
Warbled. I can't even say the word.
My voice shook so much the entire time. I sang Christina Aguilera's Reflection.
Oh, wow.
It's that girl I see. Here's the warbling.
Wow. Should we have a second go at that?
No, thank you, actually.
Would you like me to pull up the instrumental?
Oh, yes. Karaoke version?
I had a similar experience of, so in 7th grade, I don't know if this is the same at your school, everybody tried out for cheerleader and pretty much everyone got it. Like maybe a handful of people didn't get it. And I don't know what their qualification was or not, to get it or not. But I didn't even try out.
Okay. So it stopped you from doing that. See, I did it, but
Right.
then my fear of being rejected impacted my performance. But it stopped you from
I
even
didn't
doing
even
it.
try.
Okay.
Yeah. And I regretted that. I still regret that to this day. Not really. But yeah. And I didn't essentially try out for any school sport, for any choir or band or anything like that ultimately. And I mean, we haven't talked about my past so much on this podcast, but that intense anxiety and fear of rejection did lead me to go down a path of using drugs and alcohol to kind of placate that and help my anxiety. But yeah, rejection's real.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah, it's hard. And I mean, I remember after that performance, just to go back real quick, of I was so humiliated. And I mean, I was just sure everybody was going to remember and bring that up. And I don't think anybody said anything, right? I remember sobbing afterwards, right? And embarrassed us, I can't show up at school. I'm going to drop out, right? And I mean, I think there's some normal teenage insecurities too. And though,
I feel like I still have that to this day of I can't do this.
Right. But I mean, I'm trying to illustrate a point too, though, with rejection. We so often think that people are honing in on our perceived inadequacies. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the mistakes and all of that. And we hold on to that probably more than we should.
Yeah. And I'm going to share, I've shared this before on our social anxiety podcast, but I remember learning in social psychology this research study about, so there was one person who wore this outrageous shirt, had a big giant head on it, face, something just ridiculous. You don't see that every day, right? And there was a bunch of other participants in the research study, and they didn't know what they were looking for, what was going on. And after, I think they had social interaction for an hour or so and had to network and mingle. After this social interaction, they had a questionnaire and they asked a bunch of random questions, and some related to this person with the t-shirt. And majority of them, I think it was a very small percentage, a very small percentage did not even remember the shirt the person was wearing. And a few did, and there wasn't a lot of judgment with that either. So yeah, there is something about, we think that people are judging us maybe more than they actually are. As far as this fear of rejection goes, there can be a lot of perceived rejection that maybe is not exactly true. In your case, this choir experience, which still is kind of bubbles up inside of you a little bit. Still. I want to hear there's some research that you talked a little bit about. Can you share that with our listeners?
Yeah. So we're talking about what makes rejection hard, and And in a way of helping people understand that rejection is normal and to illustrate the difficulties with it, I often share with clients this study. It's in the book called Attached, which is one of our favorites.
Yes. Get it.
Yeah.
If you haven't.
Yeah. But I mean, you and I, we are obviously on the same page that we understand as humans, we want to be connected, that there is going to be that need for approval. Hence why rejection can be difficult.
Yeah,
right?
Devastating at times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I though want to bring to light, because I know for myself, and I can judge myself for, quote unquote, feeling weak, like, why am I not over this? Why is this so hard for me? And for anybody else that can resonate with this, especially with rejection. They did this study where they had 3 participants play a computer game. One was actually a human participant. The other 2 were computer participants, right? Like, I don't know how you say it. Am I making sense?
Yeah, like a virtual...
Artificial intelligence.
AI.
Yes. But we're making a point with it, people. Yes. However, the human participant did not know that the others playing were not
robots.
Humans. Yeah, that there were robots. Yeah. And they were playing a game where you toss the ball around. And this is a computer game, okay? Mind you. And then the 2 robots essentially were throwing back and forth to each other while the human participant felt left out. And they were hooked up to some sensors and were able to measure the brain activity of this participant who was feeling rejected and left out. And
Which was an adult.
And an adult, by the way. Yes.
Yes, not a child.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. Very important that we say that. Adult, with a mature brain. But in the brain, the part related to emotional pain lit up. Just playing a simple game.
Wow.
Right? Isn't that, and I share that because I think it is so important to understand that we're wired to protect ourselves from rejection or social ostracization.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Just made that. Anyways, words are hard right now. And I think one way that we can become more comfortable with rejection is understanding that there is going to be difficulties and initially with handling it.
Absolutely.
But it's not that you're doing anything wrong.
Right. So there's research that's totally normal, that it's a painful experience, something's happening in your brain. Yeah. So I feel like that takes a little bit of this pressure or criticism off of yourself to oh, it's fine that I feel rejected by a friend or something, and this is so hard for me.
Yeah. So baseline, if you're human, and
if you're
human and not necessarily a sociopath or a robot, rejection's gonna hurt. It's gonna sting, right? Because from a survival standpoint, we need others.
Yes. Yeah. So our brains are wired to want to be approved and connected and a part of a community. Yeah. Ultimately.
Yeah. But then it just gets a little twisted when we think that we need everybody. Right? Or every situation to turn out. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One of my favorite people, Jennifer Landon at Lifeology Institute group counseling private practice, she told me whenever I first started counseling, you're not that important. And I was like, wait a second. She's the most loving, sweet person in the whole wide world. But that meant so much to me of this idea that okay, I can't do everything. I can't please everybody. And I'm not that important. Whoa.
Yeah. Ego check.
Yeah.
Right. But that's helpful though.
Right? Yeah. So tell yourself that. That's totally opposite of our self-compassion podcast, but depends on what's going on.
Right.
Ultimately. Yeah. No, I was thinking of the brain lighting up and kind of a smaller experience that I have pretty normally now and more recent than our childhood painful experiences, but I was just being around friends or taking trips with friends, and this sense of when friends are talking together and I feel excluded, and I'm more sensitive, so it's like maybe perceived exclusion, but feeling like really sad and like kind of wanting to pull away from that a little bit. Like, I don't know, just something on that level that's, it's not like a loss of a job or a partner or something like that. Like, I don't know, that's like painful in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, once again, like that group mentality, like,
Yeah.
and I think it can be like rejection can be especially tested when, right? And you think about the stereotypical experience of, back in maybe in like PE, elementary school,
Oh, when you're
people
not
choosing
picked.
teams, you're not like chosen for a
Oh,
team.
yeah.
Do you remember?
I think I've
that?
like blocked that out because I was
Yeah.
not like sports inclined. My brother got all those genes.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, when we bring this up, I can think about a time there was like kickball was going on and like getting down to the very last, and I was like so anxious.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, yeah, that's like a form of omission is
Yeah.
like rejection, like just not being
Yeah.
picked ultimately. Yeah.
But where were you going with that?
I don't know. I think we're just like sharing how we feel rejected on a regular basis.
It's really
But-
normal.
But like getting into like some things maybe that like would be helpful. I think one of the things that like I took away from that research study that you talked about is like this form of acceptance that we all experience rejection. It's normal.
Yeah.
It's painful, and that like not trying to necessarily change it or fight it or get somebody's approval or avoid the embarrassment, but like I'm just going to accept I'm human and I'm going to experience rejection
Yes.
right now or at some point in my life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think-
Can you speak any more on like the acceptance piece of that might be helpful?
I don't know, I think you pretty much like covered it.
Yeah.
Once again, using that sort of idea that like you're not that important, right? Not personalizing the fact that it's necessarily about you, and also understanding it's human to experience
Yeah.
rejection.
Yeah, I think that like key word that you just said was not personalizing. Like it's so easy to, be like, I'm the reason they're not picking me or throwing the ball at me. Kind of like checking the facts a little bit.
Yeah. And maybe it is about you,
Yeah, sometimes it could be.
right?
Yeah.
And then I think that's where you kind of have to look at the deeper work in handling with rejection is what we said earlier, what are your triggers? And then what are the beliefs that you tell yourself after a rejection?
Okay.
And like, do you make more like global assumptions and broad beliefs? So let me like try to break that down. Perhaps, I don't know why I guess dating is a good example.
It's like the ultimate rejection.
Right.
For sure. That's
Yeah.
like my heightened moments of feeling rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just use that.
But say you do go on a date or a couple dates and you think, okay, like things are going well. And all of a sudden you get that, whether it's via text or in person of saying, hey, this, just isn't going to work out.
Or ghosting, like you don't hear anything at all.
Oh, yeah. That's probably more common.
Yeah.
But instead, I guess being aware of like what ultimately are you telling yourself? Response A could be, all right, well, turns out they're wanting something different than what I can offer. Or they changed their mind, or they weren't in the right place to maybe offer what they thought I was wanting, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Or you can jump into forming that belief of, oh, they didn't think that I was quote unquote smart enough or pretty enough or entertaining enough or came from a good enough family, right?
Yeah.
Which then leads to the idea that, oh, somehow I'm not lovable or dateable.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like often going down a list of like, what did I do wrong? Did I send too many texts? Did I not send enough text? Was I a certain way whenever we were meeting? Like I can just go down the list and kind of like ruminate and chew on whatever it is that I did wrong, which really takes the power away from me and like gives it to this other person versus, I feel like your mentality is more realistic and more reality ultimately of like, maybe they changed their mind. Maybe I wasn't a good fit. And ultimately, this rejection is not a projection of future rejections.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I can still date and I'll probably still be rejected at some point in time. But that doesn't, I can't globalize, like, I'm not always going to be rejected.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when, especially rejection and the intense emotions it brings and like that fear of not being enough, essentially it just like boils down to fear.
Yeah.
When it overshadows our ability to see like the big picture, it's so easy to get into that futuristic assumption-based thinking of this is always going to happen or this is never going to happen, right? Those kind of globalized statements.
Yeah, and I will say something with like this rejection of maybe like putting some sort of time limit on it or just allowing space to feel sad. Like, even if you are rejected, maybe it's not true necessarily of like what you're thinking, like it's still sad. It's still discouraging or disappointing. It's still scary. And allowing yourself to like have those feelings, but not make so much meaning out of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, yeah. Does that something come to mind for you?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, for the clients I work with and for myself, I sometimes there can be a jumping to conclusions in meaning, and you have to stick with validating the emotion first. And then you can move through and kind of look at it, right? And I do think, knowing your rejection triggers and the stories you tell yourself about that, are really important.
Yeah.
But not like staying stuck in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to like, if, accepting the feeling that you have and accepting the reality of the situation, kind of that like wise, intuitive mind of like, does this have something to do with me? Probably more often not. But if it does, like you can take action and like problem solve on that. And I feel like when you're stuck in that rejection or that emotion, it's hard to even, say like, okay, maybe I do need to check in with how I'm dressing myself. Matt, so my fiance, he wore a lot of holes in his clothes when we first started dating. So whenever he, he could maybe like adapt or could have changed that ultimately to like be perceived in a different way.
Yeah.
So there are some like, I think skill building that you can do, but being in rejection, it feels hopeless.
Right. Yeah. No, but I think you make a good point of almost anticipating that you can't really have a clear view or be able to problem solve when you're in that emotional state. So get rejected, tell yourself, hey, I'm just not going to make any broad conclusions or like take any actions right now because I just can't necessarily trust myself.
Yeah. And like with a job, getting feedback eventually from the job of like, oh, you don't have enough experience or, something like that. Like you can ultimately like gain back that power and control.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I told you on earlier today about how I got rejected from grad school.
Oh, yeah. And then I told her I did as well.
And can you imagine?
We both didn't even know that about each other.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
There's so much shame in it.
Yeah,
Not really.
If we
anymore.
had it like based on that feeling of, somehow we're inadequate, that we never tried to apply for another grad school program.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here.
Absolutely.
And I'm really confident in saying, no, I'm not the best therapist, but I'm damn good with some of the clients I work with. Right? So University of Wyoming grad school program, you missed out. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. In Commerce School of Counseling program. No. And it's funny too, because we were talking about how we were both accepted into like one of the top programs in the US, like number one in the state of Texas. And I was rejected by like I don't even know where they are, but UNT is number one, so they got to be further down the line.
Yeah, I think that like number 12 nationally.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important not to make that decision based off rejection. Oh, I'm never going to try again.
Absolutely.
Right. Because, I mean, there are so many factors, and especially for clients that I work with that, with whether it's the job search or applying for schools, I mean, so much of it is like numbers based, and there's some like sort of political influence, they're looking for a certain type, right? That you have no control over.
Yeah.
And so then to personalize it just doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah, that key term of like personalizing, of like having some space and distance from what it is you're being rejected from. Like, I don't know, just setting it aside yourself a little bit. And we are ultimately kind of egocentric people. So yeah, it's easy, I think, to like personalize and identify as ourselves. I think we have more control when we do that, right? Like, it's something I'm doing. Okay, I can stop talking so much and they'll like me. I can stop doing embarrassing things and I won't be rejected.
Yes, no, thank you for making that point. There is that balance of understanding where we do have control and can make change, and then ultimately understanding that's more likely that we don't have control.
Yeah.
Right. Over a lot of situations that could involve rejection.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. Oh, this is good stuff.
Like reminding us.
Where were we like 10 years ago? Like, right? I needed to hear all this information.
No, I just love, we'll have another episode with Rachel Sipperly on it, right? She's talking about fail fast. Essentially failure can be rejection, right?
Yeah.
But just
absolutely.
how we do need to get more comfortable with it. And we've referenced before in other episodes about like Albert Ellis's approach.
I love it. Say it again.
We'll just like keep reminding you.
Revisit it. Yeah.
But he was intensely afraid of rejection, specifically for women in any sort of romantic.
And he's like a big psychiatrist in our field, psychologist. I'm not exactly sure. He's a theorist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for him, he realized the importance of not personalizing, getting used to getting uncomfortable, dealing with the feelings that rejection evokes. So he went up to 100
own exposure therapy in a way. Yeah.
Approached 100 women, like strangers on the street, and just said, hey, can I get your number? And then of course, like any discerning woman would probably say no to a stranger on the street.
And he got, what was it? Like
10% was a yes.
Yeah. So 90% was a no.
Right.
So yeah, that's hard. So one of my friends, her name is Reagan Paulson, and she has her own private practice in Dallas. She works primarily with OCD. She's amazing. Yeah. And she did this own experience like with herself, had like this intense fear of like rejection, embarrassment. And so she's working with her therapist, and I don't know how she came up with this.
Is this the peanut butter?
Yeah. She goes to Walmart and grabs like 20 canisters of peanut butter, jars of peanut butter, and carries them around Walmart and says, here, would you like some peanut butter, to all these random people? And of course, everybody said no. But she's exposing herself to this rejection, ultimately, making a mistake, being embarrassed. Yeah. So, yeah, I challenge you, listener, do
come up with your own
weird.
Yes.
Yeah. What are you afraid of? And kind of like we've talked about exposure therapy before. It's like on a scale to where there's something maybe you're minimally afraid of being rejected by, something super you're afraid of being rejected by. Like start small and kind of build up to applying for that job or going on dates or whatever it is.
Yeah, because the point of this is to realize that rejection is actually not going to be the death of you.
What? Are you kidding me? And you could have not argued that with me whenever I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been.
No, I absolutely.
Yeah.
But to understand that you're going to get through it.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of like resiliency that you do have, you may not even know unless you expose yourself to it even more.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to hurt still.
Yes. Yeah.
But maybe you can like relate with what I'm about to say is that I've learned that I can bounce back typically a little bit faster. Like the more that I've gotten used to putting myself in situations where like rejection could happen. Right?
Yeah.
Has it gotten easy? Do you think you can bounce back from it? easier or no?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I still, struggle sometimes with just like I can have like overwhelming emotions sometimes. And so it can still feel like the end of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, like now I have the skills and tools. Like if it is something like very intense that like with time, it feels like it, is easier and I know what to do now,
Yeah.
and I know how to move forward
Yeah.
and lean. Really, I think for me, it's like continuing to lean into it ultimately. So, but maybe we can share some of the other things that we've done
Yeah.
as far as like dealing with rejection and
Yeah.
kind of what we share with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, of course, as therapists, we're going to tell you, feel your feelings.
Yes.
Validate it. Yes, you're human. Know the beliefs, and check the like whole picture.
Yeah. Check the facts.
Yeah.
What's going on.
Yeah. And then I think it's also really important to be able to give yourself some credit where credit is due.
Your wins.
Yes.
Like, what are you winning at? I have this one client, every time she calls me, she goes through her wins first.
Aw.
And that's her own doing.
Yeah.
But I love it and it's so helpful that I
Yeah.
do it with more clients because how often do we acknowledge like the
Yeah.
things that we're doing right or well that we're proud of?
Right. Yeah. And it's just important to counter the negativity in that way, as well as you remind yourself it's not necessarily the outcome always, but the process.
For sure. Oh gosh. I feel like, as I've gotten older, that's like proven more and more true.
Yeah.
Or,
So-
like I can appreciate it more.
Yeah, so work hard to find at least one thing that you did well in that interview, in that presentation, on, that date. I know any other place where you would need to.
Yeah, I think it's easy as humans, like gray uncertainty is hard. So we want to make it either it was right or it was wrong. We did super well or we failed. And so like what is something that we did well? Like maybe it was a 6 instead of a 10, right?
Yeah, and when we acknowledge, those strengths and those truths, it doesn't mean that we're going to dismiss areas for improvement.
For sure.
Okay, so maybe you did clam up and that impacted your performance, right? Okay. All right, now what are you going to do to like work with that self-talk, breathing before, during.
Just practicing.
Practicing, knowing, like it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at anything, so.
Yeah, I hate that saying. But yes, yeah.
Yeah. And even when you do have it down, like, here's the thing, because once again, we're human, we could show up in a different way that day. And maybe we're running short on sleep. Maybe our mind is elsewhere. And we're just not going to be our best self,
food.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of like yoga, like, we love yoga. But yeah, like showing up in yoga certain days, like I can't do certain things or I'm not as strong as I am other days, like same mentally.
Yeah. And
emotionally.
So then if others, I guess make a comment about and reject you in a way, then you have to understand, okay, well, like what was going on for me?
Yeah.
And can I do anything moving forward?
Yeah.
So also, how do you soothe yourself?
Ooh. Yeah. I feel like that is, it's, so I think of like babies, like self-soothing, right? And I'm like, as an adult, like, do I need to be able to do that? But yeah, I think that it's so important. And I guess like for me personally, like breathing is super important. Like actively relaxing, which is kind of an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
But like I need to take a bath or do yoga or relax my shoulders or whatever it is. Reflection. So journaling is super helpful, and like all the stuff that we're talking about, like putting that on paper. There's something about like dumping it. For me, I don't know, what is soothing to you?
Yeah, I think soothing sometimes for me is a distraction.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm still working on taming that like inner critic of mine. So sometimes I just need to disconnect from the replaying of the shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah.
And so, like distraction in a healthy way. Also for me, being with others that are supportive and understanding and just having that human connection is important. Whether or not like we're, I'm needing, I guess, a more clear perspective on the situation or just like that company.
Yeah. I love DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. So a model for therapy, their way of distracting, how they describe it is like you can distract from your thoughts of like thinking about other things, like doing other things that distract your mind, distracting from your emotions. And one of my clients calls this quote unquote emotional cutting of like, I'm going to listen to a different song that makes me feel a different way.
Oh yeah. Opposite action.
Yeah. Or watch a movie that's maybe humorous, or do something that I can experience a different emotion, or like helping other people, like volunteering or just talking to a friend about their problems. So there's so many ways to puzzles to kind of like distract your mind.
Yeah. So yes, feel and also don't become immersed in it. So,
Yeah.
What helps you kind of just like tame the emotions a little bit.
Yeah. And couples counseling, they say that when your heart rate gets over 100 beats per minute, that you're flooded with emotion. So you're like experiencing emotion so much that you cannot really use your executive functioning, that prefrontal lobe, to like think through a problem. So, I mean, not that you have to wear a heart rate monitor, which most people have one nowadays with their Fitbits or whatever. But if you are experiencing like your heart racing or something, like you can like do something to calm yourself, distract yourself until you feel like better to like handle whatever it is going on. That's with every emotion, not just rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, do things to comfort yourself. Preferably have like a variety of tools. Okay, don't judge yourself if you do like go towards substances or eating or staying busy as an avoidance tool, but just see if you can add to your repertoire of dealing with that.
Absolutely.
And then we talked about it earlier, and I know that there's a way that this is, I guess, needs to be delivered, right? Because you can go to your friend who will say, "Oh, it'll just get better." Like, just give it time.
Oh my gosh.
And that's like the worst thing
right
after.
now.
Yeah, you're just like, do you want to like give them the like middle finger? Like, no, right?
Get out of my face.
Yeah. So that's why we say validating your feelings is so important first, and then eventually coming to this point of reminding yourself, hey, with time, this will hurt less.
Yeah.
Asking yourself, do you think 5 years from now I'm going to feel this way? Probably not.
Yeah. And that's a helpful reality checking tool. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Is it going to hurt this bad maybe a year from now? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, certain situations, right? If you lose somebody, yes, that could very much still be the case.
Yeah. Well, and I'll even say like with losing a parent, which like being one of the most painful experiences I've ever experienced, like it hurts a lot less now, and I've been able to integrate it into my world and like process it. So that's, beside the point of rejection in a way, but like going through a breakup, like that felt very similarly of like the ultimate rejection, and just feeling like, I don't know if I can tolerate this ultimately. And so, being able to see on the other side, like a couple years later, like I'm fine now. Like it doesn't hurt at all anymore.
Yeah. And I think, there's so much mental talk. I know that many others can relate to this. Like we so often, when it's something is feeling especially painful, just assume that it's like going to be that way forever.
Yeah.
And it really isn't though. Like, I look at how I've been able to bounce back from rejection. And I'm like, I just have to remember that in the moment.
Yeah. Well, and even mantras, I think, like in those moments of like, if you are experiencing like, am I going to experience this forever? Like, this is so painful, of like, this is temporary.
Yeah.
And even like, I know like I had this experience whenever I was going through a breakup of like, I can't do this. But like, I can do this. Like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know, like little affirmations, and they're not life changing. It's not going to, you know, like make it go away, but
Right.
it's adding to like all the other things that you're doing.
Yeah. And with that, on like a more practical level too, like being able to note and keep track of those moments where you realize, oh, I'm not feeling so, you know, sad or fearful because of, you know, what the
Yeah.
rejection has triggered.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Maybe I had, you know, like 5 minutes today that I
Yeah.
didn't feel it. Maybe in 2 weeks I had like an hour, and like kind of acknowledging
Yeah.
those wins or the
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
planning to create more intentional positive experiences. So yeah.
Yeah, I like DBT calls it accumulating the positive. Yeah. What does that look like for you or your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for those listening, okay, what typically do you enjoy that does bring you, you know, light you up, and where you can find some sense of presence, where you can forget about other things. And knowing that that has happened in the past, obviously it's not going to be easily replicated in the midst of emotion. But if you go in saying, okay, I'm just going to give this a shot, if I have, you know, a minute of where I find myself enjoying this activity or being around this person, that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Another component I think that really helps to build resiliency from rejection is having some sort of spirituality practice,
For sure.
which once again we want to make sure that is very encompassing of, you know, your own beliefs.
Yeah, you can find that within like whatever it is that you believe in. But yeah, this like bigger idea or meaning for your life ultimately, and like trusting in something like bigger than yourself, whether it's a group of people or person or energy or God or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah. Like trying to identify with this idea that there is a plan.
Yeah.
Right. That even if it doesn't make sense now or 5 years down the road, that perhaps there will be some sort of resolution to it later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you know, can you reflect on like different instances in your life where you have like been broken up with or been rejected from a job, and like what opportunity did that create for yourself? Of like, for me, it's like, oh, thank goodness I'm not with that person.
Right.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
wow, I learned so much by being rejected from this job and like trying harder and going this other route ultimately. So,
Yeah. I love this quote real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, people have probably heard this, but every rejection is a redirection. And I think really if there's some sort of spiritual buy-in, like you believe that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that like when we're in the midst of it, like, and we don't know the outcome on the other side, it does feel like chaos, you know, of like, I don't know, like a bunch of instruments playing ultimately. And then it's kind of like an orchestra, like everything comes together like a symphony on the other side whenever you can see it all placed together ultimately. That's Joe Walsh from the Eagles on their documentary. But I love that, like visual imagery.
Yeah, trust. I mean,
Yeah.
it really boils down to trust, and rejection, I think, can trigger this, like, you know, lack of trust in self
Yeah.
when you personalize it.
Yes.
But to move away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, okay, we already talked about, you know, with rejection, being able to connect with others versus staying in a pattern of isolation or avoidance.
Yeah.
But worthy of saying again.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about Brene Brown a lot. People have heard of her, and the like idea of shame resiliency. The opposite of that is like sharing your experience with people, ultimately connecting with them on that.
Yeah.
Should we read?
Oh, yeah.
What do you want to do?
I was like, yes, let's read Brene Brown, always. And I was like, we should have some sort of event where we have people come share their like most hurtful rejections that they've come back from.
Oh, that sounds awful, Julie.
That they've come back from.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I'm just kind of thinking something along the lines. Never right. Okay, I'll form this idea later. Let's get to Brene Brown.
Okay, so this is Brene Brown from Rising Strong, her manifesto of the brave and brokenhearted. So there's no greater threat to the critics and the cynics and fearmongers than those of us who are willing to fall because we have learned how to rise. With skinned knees and bruised hearts, we choose owning our stories of struggle over hiding, over hustling, over pretending. When we deny our stories, they define us. When we run from struggle, we are never free. So we turn toward truth and look in its eyes. We will not be characters in our stories, not villains, not victims, not even heroes. We are the authors of our lives. We write our own daring endings. We craft love from heartbreak, compassion from shame, grace from disappointment, courage from failure. Showing up is our power. Story is our way home. Truth is our song. We are the brave and brokenhearted. We are rising strong. Just love her. So good. Thanks, Brene.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so much that you can dissect from this that we've really talked about, though.
Yeah. I encourage people to maybe look up this excerpt from her book, Rising Strong, and she's a great person to read. I think ultimately for rejection, like if people want resources of the gift of imperfections, you know, that's like an ultimate rejection. And I love the book called Uninvited, which has a Christian component with it. And I think it's great regardless of if you're identify as Christian or not. It's by Lisa Terkeurst, and it's just an amazing book. She even has like 10 things you must remember when rejected in her book.
Do you have those 10?
Yeah. And we kind of talked about some of them ultimately, but definitely check out the book and read that if this is something that you kind of struggle with, that you notice on a regular basis it comes up for you. Yeah.
I'm struggling to think of any concrete resources right now. But we can add to that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope you enjoyed this discussion today. It was like kind of a little dark and dirty, which I love that. And not the funnest conversation, but
so real.
Yeah,
no,
but so real.
Can I want to leave listeners with asking themselves the question: if I let like fear of rejection like take over my life, what is it going to stop me from? And then are you prepared? Are you prepared for that?
Yeah, right? To not have that.
Yeah. Not to sound like a Nike commercial, but sometimes you just got to do it. Okay. All right.
Okay, let's end on that note. Just do it.
There are my poetic words.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everyday Therapy Podcast. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes and share with your friends. It really helps us reach more people.
We might only record once a week, but we're with you every day.